I was standing in the church parking lot, holding a casserole dish I had driven 40 minutes to deliver, when my daughter told me the reception was family only. She said it with a smile. That was the part I could not shake loose. Even hours later, even after I had driven home in silence with the casserole growing cold on the passenger seat, she smiled the way a person smiles when they are embarrassed by something they have already decided not to feel sorry about. "Mom, it's just how we planned it. You understand, right?" I understood nothing. I was her mother. The October air in Murfreesboro sat heavy and damp, the kind that fogs up your glasses and settles into your knees. I had worn my good wool coat, the charcoal one I saved for weddings and funerals. I had my hair done on Thursday. I had driven 40 minutes on a highway I hate because my night vision isn't what it used to be. And I had baked a green bean casserole from scratch because my daughter, Renata, once told me it was her husband's favourite. His name is Dominic. I had met him 11 times in 4 years. I knew this because I counted. The wedding was small, she had told me, intimate. 40 people in a renovated barn outside of town. 40 people, and I was standing in the gravel lot outside it with a dish towel over a casserole and no invitation inside. She came out to meet me only because I called. She wore a cream silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill, and she looked beautiful, and it still did not soften what she said next. "We didn't think you'd feel comfortable, Mum. It's mostly Dominic's crowd. Professionals, you know how those evenings go." I did not know. I had spent 31 years as a registered nurse at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I had held the hands of dying strangers and delivered news that broke families open. I had worked night shifts and holiday shifts and double shifts to put Renata through a private college in Nashville. I had co-signed her first car loan when she was 22 and paid the gap when her insurance lapsed, and sent money every month for 3 years so she and Dominic could live in the kind of apartment their salaries couldn't quite reach. But I would not have been comfortable. I handed her the casserole through the window of my car. I did not know why. Maybe because I had nothing else to do with my hands. She took it, thanked me, and walked back inside. The barn doors closed behind her. I sat there for a long moment, watching the warm light leak through the slats, and then I pulled out of the gravel lot and drove home. I did not cry until I reached the interstate, and then I cried the rest of the way. By the time I got home to my house in Smyrna, something inside me had gone quiet in a way I did not recognize. Not numb, not angry yet, just still. The kind of still that comes before you finally decide to look at something you have been walking around for years. I changed out of my wool coat and hung it carefully in the closet. I put the kettle on, and then, because I did not know what else to do with the stillness, I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. I had kept records. I am a nurse. I keep records of everything. The folder was thick, tabbed, color-coded, dated back 7 years to when Renata first moved in with Dominic, and the requests began arriving in the gentle language of need. A bridging loan while they waited on a tax refund. Help with the security deposit on an apartment they couldn't quite afford. Then the car. Then the storage unit when they downsized. Then back up again when they upgraded. A few hundred here for an emergency vet bill. Monthly transfers that started as temporary and became permanent as seasons changed. My name appearing on accounts I had no reason to be on. Co-signed documents that made their debt a shared weight. I laid the pages on the kitchen table and added them up with a calculator I had to dig out of the junk drawer because I almost never used it. 89 separate payments, transfers, and co-signed obligations stretching from one end of their adult life to the other. The monthly total was more than twice what I lived on after Medicare and my mortgage. I sat at that table for a very long time. My kitchen is not fancy. The linoleum has a bubble near the stove that I keep meaning to fix. The refrigerator makes a sound at night like it is clearing its throat. I have worn the same 2 pairs of shoes to work for 4 years because the ones I want cost more than I let myself spend. I had told myself those were choices. Looking at the number on that calculator, I understood they were not choices. They were what was left after everything else went somewhere else. Comfortable. She had said I would not be comfortable. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen until the sky outside the window went from black to grey to the thin pink of early morning, and somewhere in that long darkness I decided that the next thing I did had to be different from every quiet thing I had done before. I was at First Tennessee Bank when it opened at 9. My banker's name was Philip. He was younger than Renata, wore a navy tie, and had the careful manner of someone trained to deliver difficult news gently. He knew me by name, which meant he also knew roughly what I was walking in to discuss before I opened the folder on his desk. I told him what I needed. Cancel the automatic transfers. Remove Renata from the joint checking account I had added her to during a weak moment 6 years ago when she said it would make things easier. Freeze my name from any new credit applications. And there was one more thing. Philip's expression shifted before he spoke. "Mrs. Okafor," he said slowly, "there was a credit inquiry on your account 3 weeks ago, under your name. It flagged automatically because the signature on the authorization form didn't match our records for you." My mouth went dry. "What kind of inquiry?" He turned the monitor so I could see. "A home equity line of credit application. My house. The house I had lived in for 19 years, paid down to less than 40,000 owed. The one thing I had built entirely on my own. Someone had filed a preliminary application to borrow against it. The name in the application field was Dominic's. I have been a nurse for 31 years. I have learned to keep my voice level when everything inside me is not. I sat straight in that chair and told Philip to freeze every account, add fraud alerts to my credit file, revoke any third-party access, and change every security question and PIN associated with my name. I told him I wanted documentation of the flagged application for my own records. He nodded and got to work. His hands moved quickly. Mine stayed still on my lap. When I walked out into the October morning, the air hit me like cold water. Clean, sharp. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment and breathed it in. Then I got in my car, drove to a locksmith on the main road, and had every lock in my house changed before noon. The messages started that afternoon. Renata first, cheerful, assuming. "Hey Mom, did you see Netflix charge you again? I think the car got flagged. Can you check?" "No hello." "No thank you for the casserole. No mention of the night before." I did not answer. An hour later, "Mom, the transfer didn't go through. Dominic has a thing due Friday. Can you just send it directly? Like 500. Then Dominic, which surprised me, he almost never contacted me directly. "Hey, just trying to sort out a payment issue. Think there's a bank glitch. Can you call us when you get a chance?" His voice on the voicemail was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone who had never once worried I might say no. I set my phone face down on the counter and went to trim the hydrangeas along my back fence. It was late in the season and they needed cutting back. I worked until my shoulders ached, and I let the phone buzz against the counter inside, and I felt something I had not felt in years, the uncomplicated satisfaction of doing something real with my hands. By evening, the tone had changed. "Renata, Mum, this is serious. We have automatic payments coming out this weekend. If they bounce, it affects Dominic's credit score. Please just fix whatever happened." "Then, why aren't you answering?" "Then, are you okay? I'm getting worried." The worry arrived only after the money. I noticed that. "By 10 o'clock, Mum, I don't know what's going on with you, but this is really not okay. We have people depending on us. This affects more than just us." I turned the phone completely off and went to bed. I slept better than I had in 2 years. She came to the house on Sunday morning. I heard the car before I saw it, that particular sound of gravel under tires I have known since she learned to drive. I was at the kitchen table with my coffee and the crossword, and I did not move. She knocked, then knocked again, harder, then tried the handle and found it locked, which it always is now. "Mum." Her voice through the door was tight, controlled. "Mum, I know you're home. Your car is here. Open the door, please." I got up and opened it. She had not slept well either. The silk dress was gone. She wore leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair pulled back quickly, mascara faint under her eyes from the day before. She looked young in that moment. She looked like the girl who used to fall asleep in the back seat on long drives and let me carry her inside. She pushed past me into the kitchen. "What did you do?" she said. "The account is frozen. Everything is frozen. Our mortgage autopay bounced a notification. The storage unit sent a warning. We got a fraud alert on the home equity application." "Sit down," I said. "Mom." "Renata, sit down." Something in my voice made her stop. She looked at me the way you look at someone who has rearranged the furniture in a room you thought you knew. She sat. I placed the folder on the table between us. Then I placed the calculator beside it, with the total still on the screen. "I have been making 89 separate payments toward your life," I said. "Your mortgage gap, your car, your storage, your subscriptions, your vet bills, your insurance lapses, your emergency transfers. For 7 years, the monthly total is more than twice what I live on." She stared at the folder. "That is your answer," I said. "That is what I did." A long silence settled between us. She reached out and touched the edge of one of the pages. I watched her eyes move across the columns. "Mom, I didn't realize it added up to." "I know you didn't. You didn't ask." She pulled her hand back. "We've both been stressed. Dominic's work situation has been complicated. We had plans that got delayed." "You had a wedding," I said. "You went to Asheville for your anniversary. You joined a wine club. I have linoleum in my kitchen that has been broken for 3 years." She said nothing. "And your husband filed a preliminary application to borrow against my house," I said, "without asking me, without telling me, 3 weeks ago." The colour left her face. "What?" "The bank flagged it. The signature didn't match mine." I kept my voice even. "Do you want to tell me about that, or would you like to keep talking about stress?" She stood up, sat back down, pressed her fingers to her mouth. "I didn't know he did that," she finally said. "I swear to you I didn't know." I looked at her for a long moment. "That may be true," I said, "but you live in that house with him, and you didn't ask where the money came from either. That's a different kind of not knowing." She started crying then. Not the performative kind, not the kind designed to redirect. Real crying, the jagged, ugly kind that doesn't care what it looks like. She put her face in her hands and cried in my kitchen while I sat across from her and let her. When she quieted, I got up and put the kettle on. I made her a cup of tea. I set it in front of her and sat back down. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," I said. "I'm doing this because I'm 64 years old and I have been slowly erasing myself, and I cannot do it anymore." She wrapped both hands around the mug. "I don't know how we manage without." She stopped, started again. "I don't know what we do." "You figure it out," I said. "The way people do. The way I did when your father left and I was 33 with a child and a mortgage and a night shift. You work and you budget and you make uncomfortable choices and you grow." She was quiet for a while. "Dominic isn't going to take this well. That is between you and Dominic." She looked at the folder again. "Are you going to press charges about the application?" "I'm watching," I said. "If nothing else happens, I'll let it sit. But if anything does, yes, without hesitation." She nodded slowly. When she left, she didn't slam the door. She closed it quietly behind her, the way you close a door in a house where someone is sleeping. I stood in the kitchen and listened to her car back out of the driveway, and then I opened a window to let some air in. The weeks that followed were not quiet. Word of the kind that travels in small cities without anyone meaning to spread it, moved through the edges of my life in pieces. My neighbour Harriet, who knows everyone, mentioned she had seen a moving truck outside Renata and Dominic's building on a Tuesday. My colleague at the clinic where I pick up weekend shifts said she ran into Renata at the grocery store and that she looked tired. My friend Sylvette, who does not soften things, told me directly that Dominic had been let go from his firm and that the wine club membership had been cancelled. I did not feel glad about any of it. That surprised me. I had expected something sharper, some satisfaction. Instead, what I felt was closer to sorrow. The particular kind you feel when you watch someone experience consequences you tried for years to buffer them from and realize the buffering was never help at all. A month after she came to the house, Renata called me. Not a text, a call. "Can I come over?" she asked. Just me. She came on a Saturday in the late afternoon when the light in Smyrna does that soft gold thing it does in November. She brought soup from the diner on Jefferson Street, the kind with the thick egg noodles, because she remembered I like it. She did not bring Dominic. She did not bring grievances. She sat at my kitchen table and we ate together, and for a while we talked about small things, a show we had both been watching, a mutual friend who'd had a baby, the hydrangeas along my back fence that had come back better than expected after I cut them down. Then she said, "I got a second job, at the clinic on Broad Street, just Saturdays, but it helps." I looked at her across the table. "And I talked to a financial counsellor," she continued, "at the credit union. She's helping us restructure what we owe. Dominic is applying at 2 other firms. She exhaled slowly. "It's harder than I thought it would be. But it's ours. It feels like ours." "That's what it's supposed to feel like," I said. She nodded, looking at the table. "I'm sorry about the wedding, about the parking lot. She stopped. "About all of it, not just the money." "I know," I said. "I think I stopped seeing you," she said quietly. "I think I started seeing what you could do instead of who you were, and I told myself it was the same thing. It isn't." Outside the window, the last of the afternoon light was going warm and amber. I thought of the drive home from that wedding barn, the interstate at night, the way I cried without knowing exactly what I was crying for. I understood it now. I had been grieving my daughter while she was still alive, still reachable, still sitting at the same table where I taught her to do homework. "It isn't," I agreed. "We did the dishes together after. She washed, I dried, the same way we used to when she was 12 and it was just the 2 of us in the house and the radio was on." She hummed something under her breath and didn't seem to notice she was doing it. At the door she hugged me. A real hug, not the obligatory side press of recent years. She held on for a moment, and I held on back. "Same time next week?" she asked. "Bring the noodle soup again," I said, "from the same place." She laughed, small, genuine. And then she walked to her car, and I stood in the doorway watching the taillights disappear down the street. I went inside and stood at the kitchen window for a long while. Then I opened the filing cabinet and took out the folder. I held it for a moment, feeling the weight of 7 years in my hands. Then I walked to the recycling bin in the garage and let it go. Paper against plastic, a soft sound for such a heavy thing. I made myself decaf and sat in the living room with the good lamp on and the television off. I had bought myself a small thing that week. Nothing extravagant. A cashmere throw blanket in the colour of dark honey, the kind I had walked past in a store window for 2 years and never let myself go back for. I pulled it over my lap now and sat in the quiet. I thought about the parking lot, the barn lights, the casserole going cold. I thought about Philip at the bank, turning the monitor to show me what someone had tried to do with my house. I thought about my daughter at the sink, humming without knowing it. And I thought about something one of my oldest patients had said to me years ago, A woman in her 80s who had spent decades raising a family on very little and was not bitter about any of it. She said the hardest thing she ever learned was the difference between giving someone a hand up and carrying them so long you both forgot they had legs. I was a slow learner, but I got there. The cashmere was warm against my hands. Outside, the Tennessee night was still and clear, and for the first time in longer than I could honestly remember, the house felt entirely like mine. I still think about that casserole dish sometimes. The way I handed it through the car window like some kind of peace offering, like if I just stayed calm enough and quiet enough and undemanding enough, it would all eventually even itself out. That is the thing no one tells you about giving too much for too long. It does not feel like a mistake while you are doing it. It feels like love. It feels like patience. It feels like being a good mother. And so you keep going, and the months become years, and somewhere in the middle of all that quiet sacrifice, you forget to ask whether the person on the other end is growing or just getting comfortable. What happened to Renata and Dominic was not punishment. I want to be clear about that, at least to myself. When the accounts froze and the auto payments bounced and the moving truck appeared outside their building, that was not something I did to them. That was the shape of a life that had been built on a foundation that was never theirs. When I stopped holding the floor up, the floor showed what it actually was. I did not cause that. I just stopped hiding it. I think about the application Dominic filed on my house without asking. There are people who would hear that and feel rage. I felt something colder. I felt recognition, because that is what happens when you teach people, however unintentionally, that your resources exist for their use. They stop asking. They stop seeing the line. They begin to believe in some quiet part of themselves that it is simply a matter of logistics. That is not entirely their fault. I helped build that belief, one transfer at a time, across 7 years. What I know now is that real integrity, the kind that holds up under pressure, does not come from having someone else carry the weight. Renata sat at my kitchen table and told me she had gotten a second job, that she was seeing a financial counselor, that the struggle felt like hers for the first time. And she did not say it like she wanted praise. She said it the way people say something true. There was a kind of clear-eyed honesty in her face that I had not seen in years. That is what I had been accidentally taking from her. Not money going the other direction. The chance to find out what she was actually made of. And then there is the matter of what I had been taking from myself. There is a kind of intelligence that has nothing to do with degrees or credentials. It is the ability to look at your own life without flinching. To add up the numbers on a calculator at a kitchen table at 2 a.m. and not look away from what they say. I was 64 years old before I did that, a registered nurse who had spent 3 decades helping other people see what was true and urgent, and I could not do it for myself. That is not stupidity. That is the specific blindness that love, when it goes unexamined, can create. The cashmere blanket I bought myself cost $43. I know because I checked the receipt twice before I let myself keep it. It sounds small, but small is where it starts. The ability to rebuild something that has been slowly hollowed out does not arrive all at once. It comes back the way warmth comes back to hands that have been cold a long time, gradually. Then, without quite knowing when, completely. Renata hummed at my kitchen sink and did not notice she was doing it. That is the moment I return to when I wonder if it was worth it. Not the confrontation, not the bank, not the folder going into the recycling bin. Just that. Her humming and the dishes and the ordinary forgiveness of 2 people who finally had nothing left to hide from each other.